friends, it's the Fat Man GM. We're here once again with another installment of my revisiting OSR games that are in my collection. The current one is, if you already know, is FASA, the Star Trek series produced by FASA. And one of the most iconic alien species out there. By far the most well-known and often perhaps best known of all the science fiction genres and movies and TV series are the Klingons. It's a rare person if you worldwide if you bring up the word Klingon that doesn't at least understand the reference. There's a lot of alien species out there that are just as iconic, but not as well known as the Klingons. And there's something about the aggressive, thickly ridged head, in your face Klingon that resonates with so many people. The fact that it would be a major staple for Star Trek is not surprising, and another, as well as the role-playing game systems, is also not surprising. FASA did their level best to give us as much information as possible on the Klingons. The Klingons as a species, as a race, as their history, as their personality types, to go along with everything we see in the movies. And it evolved with the movies and canon until, like I said, the FASA stopped producing material, which would have been in the early 90s, when we start seeing the transition from the old school cast and crew to the new school, and then later series. So as you're dealing with stuff like Discovery, for example, I have to say without a doubt, this is my opinion. Always my opinion, mind you. I believe that quite a few writers within the Star Trek uh, realm, or if you will, have had access to a lot of material, the same material that the writers and creators of the FASA game had as well. And many of these later writers have accessed and utilized the very same material from FASA in their story writing and in their development of future Star Trek series and episodes. I'm sure some people will blow that and go, oh, no, it doesn't work that way. But I don't think it does. I think there's something to be said about the continuity, the commonality of the early Klingons to post DS9 Voyager Klingons. When we start getting into this new Discovery series Klingon version, I have issues. Mostly not with their politics or their aggressive behaviors or even their ship designs, although I'm on the fence a little bit. I don't think those are past. To me, this is more appropriate for a more future setting than a past setting, because there's so many inconsistencies now between what we see in special effects and technology in the Discovery series and the earliest of TV series, including Enterprise, not necessarily uh, what they call TOS or the original series, because on the original series they worked on a shoestring budget. They really did, and it's acknowledged. But when we start looking at the extreme physical changes in what's considered the Imperial Klingon in canon, it really diverts from everything else. Now, that goes all hand with some of the changes Disney is wrapped up with the Star Wars franchise and radically trying to make it its own. And I think we see some of that going on in the Star Trek canons too, where these newest directors and writers and stuff are trying to divert somehow into uncharted territory, which with Star Trek is much more manageable or more stomachable. I could stomach it more than I can in Star Wars. Don't know why. That's the way it is. So coming up, is the Klingon intelligence briefing. This is actually part of a two-part, because I think I got this one, and it came with, either it came with this one, or these two came together, I think. No, they were several. Anyway, somehow or another, this came with something else, and I don't remember what. But this would be the information that would be available to, generally speaking, your Federation officers and crew and what have you. And so they would have some working knowledge of their foe and their opponent. So during the scope of the briefing, early Klingon life, understanding Klingon psychology, Klingon social structure, selected family lines, potential encounters. A lot of stuff that you see in the TV series and the movies would be found there. So, and it's the opening of the introduction. It's not enough to destroy your enemies, you must understand them as well. An ancient Klingon saying attributed to the legendary Admiral Korus, first Klingon flag officer to be executed by his own men. It's encouraging for the, what do you do? Alright, early Klingon life. Now, if you go, there's some conflict between this and the canon, so when we're dealing with Worf, but Worf is a unique specimen within the Klingon Human Federation interaction. It says here that the Klingons don't raise their children, in a traditional nuclear family unit. They believe that it weakens them, and in a society that's predominantly always trying to manipulate or maneuver themselves to be in a position to gain an advantage either against a foe or against a comrade, it's not surprising to find that, generally speaking, the children are put into group homes, if you will, and raised separate from their parents to some degree, and then they're tested and they're trained in combat and intelligence and 100 other things going on at that same time. What you see, huh? What you see? Oh, I see the squirrels. The squirrels! Yeah. So, in the Klingon Empire, it's a strict custom or the higher ranking members of the male's line control the family unit. Thus, the individual family members have little or no say about the size, composition, or responsibility of their group. The Klingon family unit results in a prolonged period of courtship. This is not so much a marriage in the human sense of the word as it is a contractual arrangement for mutual protection. When the female partner of the consortship decides to have children, the couple applies to the family administrator, usually a person with the rank of Vesti or above. Making the application is a complex process, nor will it deprive are there any guarantee of approval, because the pregnancy will deprive the Empire of the services of an officer or trained civilian. The family administrator must decide whether or not society can spare the applicant's expertise. If the application is approved, then the child is born, and he becomes an immediate ward of the state until the age of 3. And any time during this period, for any reason, the parents may disown the child. If unwanted, the landless children are physically sound, they may enter state orphanages resembling military training camps, which will care for them until the age of 12. At that time, such children may apply for admission to the Imperial Star Academy or officer training if qualified. Optionally, they may pursue a civilian career. Parents formally recognize the infant as a member of the family. The child remains under the exclusive care of the mother until the age of 12. Choice usually depends on the mother has her own military or political career. If she wishes to forego rearing her child, personally, she would leave the duties to a trusted member of the house. Usually speaking, that's a servitor race. So, and it's said in other elements that if something goes south in the training, the raising of the child, the nanny, if you will, can get the axe, literally. Understanding Klingon psychology, Conflict is at the heart of the Klingon way of life and the fundamental concept of perpetual conflict. Klingons conceive the conflict in different ways, often simultaneously. The notion can apply to threats to personal safety, challenges to the safety of an extended group, racial conflict, competition for position within social order, and even within one's own family life. Then there's survival. Allied with the notion of conflict as a positive experience is the basic need for survival. In a Klingon context, survival does not mean simply personal safety, however. Speaking of survival, Klingon includes the safety of his family line. Whether an action is taken by an outsider or by a family member, it can deeply affect not only the individual, but the entire line as well. Such actions translate into gains or losses for political clout in the relation of other families. Clearly, Klingons extended several instincts, includes responsibility for countless individuals. Success, unity, I won't get into those. The Klingon social structure, which is the established order, ties defined, family lines. A Klingon social group may appear to be a contradiction in terms. Nonetheless, there are two institutions offering the average Klingon citizen friendship or, on rare occasions, intimacy. These are the family line and for the institution of courtship, which together form the bedrock of the Klingon state. Contrary to the accepted belief, Klingon society allows for a surprising degree of social mobility. The individual Klingon can rise as high as he wishes in his profession, but it will help if he is also very intelligent, well-connected, and some influence accumulated. The reverse, however, is also true. No matter how exalted an individual's position, any true indication that he cannot do the job means he will probably be eliminated, often permanently. The Klingon state is a system of continually in flux. As stability leaves the average Klingon in a state of continual fear, or at least the continual awareness of his vulnerability to changing circumstances beyond his control. Assuming this is correct, the average Klingon would feel inhibited about taking risks that might result in others questioning his competency. We got a big section on family lines, another section on courtship. Remember, this is the information that was provided to Starfleet personnel to give them an understanding of the Klingons. So it's not by any means 100% accurate. We get more information out of the other books about the Klingons personally, and some of it can conflict or vary a hair. So, status symbols, personal bodyguards, a personal standard, a private ship, more than one consort, pets. An example, during the adult lives, Klingons often acquire pets which are always vicious to some degree. The practice is a major status as well as a practical consideration, as a pet is often trained as a guardian or attack beast. Significantly, Klingon children cannot have pets for fear that they will form counterproductive emotional attachments to them. Adopting pets in later years may be a reaction to such early deprivation, and yet we know at least one brief reference in one of the movies. It was said that one Klingon lamented his pet from his youth that got something or another, and I think that's why he replaced it, or at least it was mentioned. So maybe that he was an exception to the rule. Self-titled line marking talks about Klingon politics. Klingons are as political as they are military. Politics is a way of life to the typical Klingon who is bound by loyalties to the Emperor, the state, the family, and the self. No evaluation of Klingons will be complete without touching upon the various political considerations that affect his decisions in the field. All right, so we talk about politics. Mostly it's got to do with status and maneuvering. How do we better ourselves while bettering our family line and the Klingon people as a whole? And then how do we do this without sacrificing certain things or to gain power? And it's not power for the sake of power, but power gives them political clout, which gives them status, which increases the influence of their family line, which in a society that's ruled by a single individual, i.e. the emperor, in a very tight gripped handful of houses that control the Imperial Council, this sort of stuff's very important, and it can determine how much access and how much advantage the family line gets, thus the individual in the family line can achieve for. And then we got politics to deal with, exterior politics. And so there's and it comes up in one of these other books, but during the beginnings of the second Klingon Federation War gets stomped on by the Organians, who are these super powerful energy beings, and they're not the Q, so there's yet another superior intelligent species out there with great powers, and they enact what's considered the Klingon neutral zone that begins at the Rand colonies and runs ideally off into the edge of the known galaxy. And in any conflict at any time between Federation and Klingon vessels is preempted by the Organians to a certain extent, although it's said in later decades that the Organians seem to have loosened their grip on this, and yet the Federation and the Klingons, or especially the Klingons, are paranoid about the Organians, and for good reason. And I'm not going to go into a situation, but this still leaves a little window between the Ryan colonies and the Triangle, which the Organians do not police, if you will. So, having as the Organian Treaty as an example, the Klingon state is very hardcore about upholding agreements that they make as long as it's convenient for them, and they're very harsh on individual captains and that take it upon themselves to violate these treaties. And if doing so, you better have some really good reasons, an argument, and a lot of support that will back you up if things go south. Usually, the winners write the rules, so to speak. So if you succeed at something, then that will go a long way with making sure it was, we don't like that you violated a treaty, but you won't, you're successful, so we'll just slap you on the wrist, kind of thing. The appeal of empire. To understand the mystique surrounding the Klingon Empire requires an examination of the living conditions of the majority of the independent worlds and their populations. Focusing on a handful of major powers will not determine the general law of technology and quality of life among the stars. The majority of this galaxy's sentient races, new and old, are not as advanced as those of the Klingon Empire, the Roman Star Empire, or the United Federation of Planets. Many races are at the mercy of pirates who have few qualms about exploiting inferior races. Under the watchful eyes of the Imperial Trifoil, the Klingon Empire offers protection, a sense of communal safety. Given the atrocities committed by many pirates, this is a major consideration for many small worlds. Once it offers the protection or accepted, the Empire then furthers its own ends by sending in advanced weaponry or cheap labor, often in direct violation of interstellar treaties. On many occasions, Klingons introduce goods and services, including modern weaponry and slaves, that wreak havoc on a planet's social order. The Klingons will go to great lengths in the game of interstellar power politics, and they are just as capable of fighting their battles with propaganda and subterfuge as they are with swords and disruptors. Their propaganda very effectively portrays them as a source of unity and order, as well as providers of spaceflight technology and eventual incorporation into the Comrax. The Klingon, i.e. the Empire, the Klingons do not care that the presence of new technology or the intended military base will irrevocably disrupt the natural evolution of the allies they are enticing. See, they don't have a version of the Prime Directive, and they don't care about such things. It's not convenient. So, we got some selected family lines and some information on them. None of these include any of like the Duras family, the House of Moog. They're not in here at this moment because they didn't exist at the time of the creation of this. So I'm sure otherwise they would have been. Some of these houses are led by Klingon human fusions, as they call them, or Klingon Romulan fusions. We'll get into those at a different point, a different time, because those are up and down depending on how you look at it. You can see some of the various houses. House name is Polara. Klingon human fusions are about 40% of the house. Imperial Klingons 55. 5% are Klingon Romulan fusions. The size of the House averages 20,000 to 27,000 members. This gives you an indication when they talk of political house. So the House of Moog is not just a handful. It's not like it's not Worf's immediate family. It's their family leads this house, and the house is consisting of tens of thousands potential members, and across great distances, many planets. The parallel line is one of the most modern elements within the Klingon Empire. They have established a reputation in service of the Empire, if not the actual Emperor. The majority of Palara have entered the Imperial security and seem to have established a hard-fought niche for themselves there. The Palara are extremely Alalara, however you want to pronounce it, are extremely loyal to the fellow line members and just as predictable in their hatred of any who abandon the line in favor of another. So, it just gives you a sample of what we're talking about. So, like the next house, Solazarian, depending with various spellings, has an estimated 45 to 50,000 members. House Lemari, 10,000, 12,000. So we're talking significant numbers. And then we have potential encounters, shipboard life in the Klingon Imperial Navy, shipboard life, Klingon naval strategy and tactics, which is one of the things that has allowed the Federation to pretty much hold their own against the Klingons, and in some aspects the same situation with the Romulans. The Klingons usually can field many more ships than any of their foes, and some of their tactics are basically crude, overwhelming, swarming tactics, that kind of stuff, brute force. Large numbers of moderate-sized ships versus smaller numbers of much more advanced, larger ships. The Romulans don't have the luxury of having as many massive fleets of ships as the Klingons, so they use strategy and guile as well as intelligence against their foe. And the Federation uses a little bit of both. And it says here, Starfleet officers can expect the Klingon warships to operate either individually or as a loosely knit group of 3 ships under a nominal squadron commander. The Klingons are excellent tacticians in fleet actions involving small numbers. Conversely, Klingon tactics lack the coordination necessary for large fleet elements and long-range planning because individual Klingon commanders prefer independent action. If you're a member of a much larger command, you don't get as much glory. You don't have as many opportunities to shine in the eyes of the Emperor and the Empire. So, it doesn't work so well when they do larger group operations, which works to the advantage of their foes. Ironically, they were much better off at small conflicts, and many of them, as opposed to one huge going to war, interstellar war with their opponents. And we see this in later series too, when the Federation, or when the Klingons go up against the Federation again during the Dominion War, and then change sides like 2 or 3 times when they take down the Cardassians, etc. Imperial Intelligence, Imperial Security, Klingon Diplomatic Corps. So, just to be specific, they do have a diplomats, they do have a diplomatic corps, they do quite a bit. And it's just in around. They got their own security, and the Imperial Intelligence, which they do try to find advantages against their foes, technology, and to understand why their foes do what they do. Said here, the mission of Imperial Intelligence is to collect and analyze information concerning forces hostile to the Emperor, be they external or internal. There you go. Imperial governors, Imperial coordinators, such merchants and ships can flood, blah, blah, blah. So, there you have it. A Klingon intelligence briefing provided to you from I'm not even sure that kind of doesn't. What do you do? At the present time, the system mutual suspicion exists between major interstellar powers to a high degree. Even the most casual observer of the interstellar affairs will conclude that the potential for armed conflict has never been greater. Although interstellar war may not break out, the regional conflicts are likely to occur with increasing frequency. The Starfleet must prepare its officers to meet the Federation's enemies under several conditions and circumstances. Past, the Federation has relied on superior technology to better its opponents. The Federation cannot assume that it will maintain its technological edge. Surprise, surprise, and however, nor that it should remain our most fundamental priority. One major advantage the Starfleet holds over its adversaries is, other than giant cats, is the superior training and preparation of fleet personnel. Starfleet must continue to maintain its high standards for well-trained and highly motivated line officers. Brought to you by Admiral Horatio Comstock, Chief of Operations, Starfleet Command, Stardate 2-2306.12. There you have that. And once again, Klingon intelligence briefing.